Hello everyone. Hope you all can hear me. Let me know in the chat if you can't. Today is February draw day. Now this draw is for people who have they pledged $2 or more and that payment has gone through at the beginning of February. If you're on here and you've just pledged, that means, to be fair, because you can pledge and actually withdraw a pledge before the monthly payment, which comes at about the second or third of each month. To be fair, you can't be entered into the draw until you've at least, had one payment. So, without further ado, anyway, today's draw is for this, the Causeway Ray. This is a $550 DAC amp. It's a really tiny DAC amp actually. And if you see my video of it, it's designed to kind of sit under a phone and connect using micro USB. And then it has enough power for IEMs, or you could use it with an amp and make a nice little system, which isn't too bad. Anyway, for $550, that's quite expensive, but it's quite a neat unit. Don't know about the price, but for free, you can't complain. Now, the winner of the draw has to pay for postage, obviously. I'll send it via EMS, and I think the cost to somewhere like the US or Europe will probably be about $15 or so, or €15. I'm not sure. That's taking a rough guess. It used to be cheaper, but it's gone up a bit, so it's not a heavy thing, so it's probably not going to be too expensive, but assume it's going to be $15 to $20 or euro or what have you. For the draw, what I did is I got a nice printout of all the people who had pledged, and I printed out the spreadsheet and I cut strips of paper from the $2 and above and put them in this basket. So you have strips of folded paper with names and actually pledge amount, I think, on there. And just the first names. I'm just going to tell people, announce the first name of the winner. And if you did win and you don't want the Causeway Ray, probably the easiest thing to do is just say so, and I'll do another draw. But anyway, first draw for my Patreons, and let's get into it. And afterwards we can do a Q&A if anyone's around and wants to do, and so far there are a couple of people watching. Anyhow, so I'll give this a nice shake. The bits of paper are folded, so I'll do this where I can't see it. Well, you can see my hand going in, but I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, the winner of the February draw is Ian, I-A-I-N. So Ian, I will contact you. I'll email you since I have your email address on Patreon. I'll show that up there. Ian, is it going to focus? I'm on the Nikon, so you don't know if I can really focus well, but if you can see it there, that's Ian. And the Nikon unfortunately doesn't have autofocus. My Sony does, but if actually we jump into the webcam, if I put that in there. There we go. So that's the winner, Ian. And unless for some reason you don't want it, you are the winner of a $550 Causeway Ray. And so I shall be contacting you shortly if you're not on the chat. G'day to the people who just joined. Let me just turn off the webcam. We don't need that. Now I've got a bit of time. If you have any questions, let me know, because now's a good time. And updates to what's happening. These big black things are next on my list to review. There'll probably be some intermediary stuff, such as random Newforce IEMs, and I'm really overdue for reviewing IEMs which are floating around here somewhere, which is why they're probably overdue, because I keep forgetting. But these are the three big ones. These actually, this has to go back to the manufacturer. This has to go on to somebody else. It's the R2, R7, and the Master 9 is probably, it'll sit there for a while because it's going to be my kind of standard amp. But I've been listening through those and listening through headphones, and they've been all very interesting. If you have questions about them, probably now is a good time to ask, because that's I do want feedback and get ideas from people who are going to be watching the reviews, and maybe even if they're not thinking about buying them, what kind of things would you be interested in knowing about them? So no, Ian is not in the chat for the person who just asked. And I've run out of stuff to say. But I will talk for a little bit while I wait to see if any questions. Probably, I don't know if everyone's asleep right now. In the US, it should be sometime in the late evening, and not everyone may have noticed that there's actually a live chat on. So what I might do is I might open it up to public. Even though this is a Patreon stream, if there are not many people going to be around, I may open just to public, and people may just end up popping in and asking questions. So I have a bit of time this afternoon. Let's do that. Nobody's around. Let's make it public. Probably because it's a Saturday night too. A lot of people aren't around. I change the description. There we go. Okay, question. Based on the latest Hugo 2, that it drives the Utopia, is there any reason to buy the big stuff anymore? You could answer that no. People prefer... Now, this is going to be a sound signature thing, which is going to really come up with the R2, R7. This kind of combination is a little bit more mellow. And the interesting thing was, the Utopias are big on the upper mids. But the upper mids come through more out of the Hugo 2, which you can just see behind everything there, whereas it comes out less so out of the Master 9, which was really a surprise. Now, both companies are aiming towards neutral. My theory with the Master 9 is it's the DC offset op amps, and they're not used for amplification, they're used for DC offset. For some reason, and this was with the 1 amp, if I changed those to different op amps, the sound suddenly became more lively, and for whatever reason, it shouldn't have any effect. But Kingwa believes he's producing the most neutral amp possible, and Rob Watts is believing he's producing the most neutral amplification possible. But there's subtle differences in the sound, and it's not something that shows up in frequency responses. And maybe it's just probably the Hugo 2's distortion is much lower. It's very likely going to be much lower because he's just worked purely on that for decades. So, but some people still prefer this kind of old sound. And, they're going to switch it into non-oversampling mode, and they're going to prefer that. And some people just like that. And it's the same thing with vinyl. Some people just prefer it. And to them, things like the Hugo 2 are too bright or hi-fi or what have you. And whether that's because it's just the sound signature is kind of clearer, or, or because, the Hugo 2 is sensitive somewhat to USB input quality and transport input quality. Whether they're hearing a bit of harshness or noise that's coming through, I don't know. So that's my thought on that. So well, the other reason, of course, if you have Susvaras, then you need, obviously, a big amp. But is there any reason to? Well, for me, no. I'm happy with this Hugo 2 combination, but I'm using a lot of electronics with it. So, but I think some people will still prefer the big stuff. I mean, the big tube amps. I mean, if you have lots of money, why not? So, do you plan on getting a demo unit of the HiFiMan R2 R2000? I haven't seen the R2 R2000, so the answer is I don't know. Let's see what HiFiMan says. I haven't talked to them for a bit, and the next show is coming up at the end of April. And so I have to go and talk to them and see what they want to do, because I'm going to ask to review the latest, the electrostats and other stuff. I was thinking of doing some, I need to actually get in a Stax, the top-of-the-line Stax rig, and then hopefully hook up the Stax to this, and then maybe even compare it to the HiFiMan one. And we had an idea, actually. HiFiMan has an office in Tokyo, and we had an idea to have a big meet and try and bring all the big electrostatic amps and stuff there and compare them. And, bringing, a manufacturer's space, bringing competing stuff is kind of, well, some manufacturers aren't cool with it, but some may well be. So it depends on what they think. But I think I'd like to do the big Stax. Big comparison to the latest kind of electrostatic gear. Mr. Speakers, I haven't talked to Dan for a while. I should, and I've just been waiting for him to complete that. And so Mr. Speakers, Stax, and HiFiMan all together. And so for people who want to spend whatever it is now, between $5,000 and $10,000 on an electrostatic rig, what will you get and how will it come out? I'd really like to do that. That'd be really fascinating. Because I bailed out of Stax ages ago because it was too much trouble. You get one amp, and you could only use it with essentially one pair of headphones, or one pair of headphones with one amp. So that was, the Susvaras are kind of similar in that. They're kind of limited to using it with this for the most part. So, but some people are willing to just, if you want the best, you're going to choose, the best that you can get. And then again, it'll be interesting to compare to the top-of-the-line planers as well. How does it compare? All the Utopias as well, which are kind of knocking on the door of that kind of resolution, technically or audibly. That would be really fascinating. Next question, how does the R2 R7 compare to the previous Master 7? Now, I didn't have both side by side, so you'd have to check other people's impressions, but going by like previous impressions of stuff, let's say the Shit Audio Yggdrasil had tighter bass. One of the things everyone talked about, Moffat bass. And I think that the R2R7 has caught up with that. Now, the previous PCM2 set, the Burr Brown based ones tend to have a little bit less precise bass, maybe. So probably in general, I'm taking a fair guess here. Going by my comparisons between DACs and my memory of them, I'd probably say that the kind of overall precision is somewhat better in many respects. But then of course it depends how you set it up. And I've got it set up now with what's called accurate firmware. I don't know if you've been following the whole thing. The stock firmware is a little bit smoother than, but is kind of really extremely pleasant to listen to, like a typical ladder DAC. The accurate firmware it increases the precision in the internal in the output of the FPGAs and the output of basically all the programmable chips in there, and that firmware is more kind of sensitive to the quality of everything. Like when the USB was I was first using the USB input. When I very first switched it on, it was kind of sounding not so great. And then I was using other inputs, and then I decided to leave the USB plugged in with a power source for a few weeks, and then it was much better. And then jumping to using the IFI as a source for the USB, and this is prior to the now isolated USB you can get with the R2R7. Using that, and now the Raspberry Pi as well, which you can, I don't know if you can see in the video, I'm just looking at my screen. There's a little Raspberry Pi sitting right back here. And using that as a Roon endpoint to the IFI has been, it's not something I pass a blind test on, but it seems subtly better. It just feels smoother, like smoother as in like some layer of harshness has gone compared to plugging my MacBook in, or one of my Apple computers into there. So using that whole thing to the R2R7 has just been really lovely, especially with the accurate firmware. And apparently the best you can do is using the accurate firmware and then in non-oversampling mode, upsampling instead with Adavana Plus. And that's the best, probably about the best I can get. So it still says that kingless filters are a little bit behind the best that's available, but you can get a fair bit of really nice sound out of one of these. But with an older, there's a lot of people out there who wrote a lot of information up about tweaking the Audio GD DACs, and if you're really into the kind of tweaking and stuffing around with I2S and transports and software and all that kind of thing, then you can really get a lot out of them. So if there's one going cheap, I don't know. They work best after they've been left on for at least 4 hours, so they're best left powered on all the time. So unlike me, this is switched off at the moment. If I'm going to do a listening, I have to switch it on and leave it on for 4 hours for best results. But my power bill is from hell, so Japanese power costs are much higher than other places. So actually, that's part of the reason I have to hurry up and finish with all these, because they generate too much power, and so add something like $50 a month extra to my power bill. So if you do find one, well, yeah, I don't know. Do you ever use your Hugo 2 into the Master 9? Yes, I have, and that's going to be part of the review for this. So I don't do with the Utopias. This is the version, it's not the one designed for the HE6 or Susvaras, so it's a little bit underpowered, and so you lose a little bit of bass kick with the Susvaras compared to using the Solaris or a speaker amp. Can you use your Pi from the Tidal app without Roon? No, you can't, because it's got software on there. The only way you could, I don't know if what was it, HQ Player? I don't know if there's some way you can use it with HQ Player, because HQ Player has a network option for it. I'm not sure if it can somehow act as a digital output, but otherwise you can't. The Raspberry Pi is a computer, so to use it by itself, to use Tidal, you'd have to actually install something like Ubuntu on it, and then plug in a monitor, and then run Tidal from that. If Tidal runs on Linux, I don't know. So that's where we're at with that. And we're out of questions. So I've opened this up to the public because we haven't got many people around at this time, but feel free to ask questions. Are there any headphones you're looking forward to hearing in the near future? Stax again, the what was it? Meze, the Meze, those really crazy Meze things that are a one-off. And I don't have the Mezes handy, that I'm looking forward to. I hopefully go to CanJam Singapore if I can and listen to those. That'd be really crazy to try. What the latest Mr. Speakers Electrostats I want to listen to again. I've been waiting for Dan to finish up with those. I'll probably hear them again in April. So then probably from the end of April, I'll start. When I go to the show, I tend to organise loaners and other stuff. Speaking of Mr. Speakers, I've got to do the Eon Flow Open. I'm behind on those. Everyone has been asking me about the Focal Clear, and I think I should do a Utopia Clear LX comparison. The LX is floating around. I don't know if you can see them in the video. They're right there. And so everyone's been asking about the Clear. Everyone's been talking about the Clear, so I should probably do a review. And so I have to see if I should contact Focal directly or talk to their distributor or something like that. The other ones are actually some really cool looking ultrasones I haven't tried yet because I missed the last show due to my broken toe. And usually the ultrasound guys are there, and I probably will borrow a pair for a couple of weeks and try those. I don't expect miracles. You know, ultrasound seem to always be behind on sound quality, but still I'd like to try them anyway. They are a very capable company. Whether they actually produce something I think is going to be really excellent, I'm not sure. Okay, next questions coming up. Sorry, I have to jump and find out where we're up to. Okay, how are Utopias with Audio GD on your desk? I have the R2, R11 and looking to upgrade. Is it worth it? The Utopias will scale as high as you can go, I think. I don't know, like the most expensive DAC I've had here has been a Hugo 2. I didn't have the Utopias here when I had the Dave, but what I was thinking of doing now is again borrowing the Bluetooth and Dave combo if I can. And the problem is return shipping on that is kind of going to be ugly because it's going to be this massive stack of heavy electronics. And I might do that, and I'll try and have another listen. I'm going to take my Utopias, now with my fancy shiny cable with better connectors, to the Tokyo show and have another listen to the Bluetooth Dave combo directly. Because as if you saw my last video, I suspect something to do with the connectors. Somewhere in this whole mess of everything that's been going on, it could have been because I had an amp hooked up at the same time, and maybe some of the amps I have do funny things when an input is switched out, or I don't know, but something obviously funky was going on. But I know this setup works, so if suddenly this setup really kicks ass with the Bluetooth Dave, I'm going to know, well, it was the cable or the connectors or something, I don't know. So, but do I use it with where we're at the question? I'm going way off topic. So if you do have Utopias, yes, they're going to go scale up to, say, a Hugo 2 or an Yggdrasil or, one of these big expensive DACs, definitely. So it's definitely worth jumping up there if you have that. I mean, it's very disproportionate difference. You'll definitely notice an improvement with better gear. How does the Master 9 convert the Hugo 2 single-ended into output into balanced, or limited to the single-ended power of the Master 9? No, it does. The Audio GD amps, if they have a single-ended input, they do have a discrete phase splitter in there, which will convert it to balanced. So the only thing is you lose some gain. So the volume control, whereas you might be, say, 20 on a balanced input for the same voltage level, might be 40 or something like that on the when you're using balanced headphones but single-ended input. So you lose about half the voltage, but it's a logarithmic pot, so you still have a lot of gain. And if it has 99 steps on the volume, well, you're going to be up to, you still have plenty of headroom there. And yes, not logarithmic pot, sorry, exponential pot, whereas instead of the volume being linear, it goes up in a curve. So you'll still have plenty of volume, and it'll still behave really, really well, but you just have to change the actual volume level when using something with a single-ended input versus using something balanced. Okay, hello Albert C. If you play music from your PC, what program do you use? At the moment I'm using Roon, and if you just join Roon to a Raspberry Pi, which is running Diet Pi, which is a super minimal Debian Linux system, which is just literally I use the terminal, log in, and then run command line stuff to say, it has a menu system. It's install XYZ, and it's very, very simple. If I don't, I was using Audivana Plus from a Mac Mini, which is hiding. Actually, the Mac Mini is sitting literally under the desk in this really gap above the drawers, and they've got a little monitor just off screen here, which I use Audivana Plus, and that gives the best results. But I prefer the Diet Pi output via Roon, because Roon can pull both from Tidal or from my library, and I can select if I want to do the DSD version or the regular PCM version or the Tidal version and compare them. Okay, what are your thoughts on the R2R1? I haven't got one here yet, but given I've got the R2R7, it should be pretty good. I think Kingwood's got over his initial screw-ups with the initial Singularity DAC, and generally the Audio GD stuff is very predictable. The smaller it is, it's going to be less good than the stuff that's bigger, which is going to be less good than the stuff that's even bigger still. So as long as you match everything up within your budget or whatever, if you get their cheapest DAC and then their biggest amp, it's not going to be a good combination. You want to get the stuff that's about the same size, or just talk to Kingwood and say, I'm thinking of buying XYZ, is this going to be a good combination? But something like that with, I predict that an R2R1 with the 1 amp, which I've got sitting on a desk over the other side, I'm just looking at it, and if you're brave enough to do the DC offset op-amp mod, which is just pulling stuff out and putting it in a very, very fiddly position, that would actually be really quite a kick-ass combination, I reckon. Great music room, enjoy your videos, thank you. Did you ever notice this sound quality difference between optical and USB out of the computer? That's a long, that's a difficult one. It's a long answer, yeah. Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's not quite so simple. I did an experiment, and I don't know if I have it here. Okay, I have. This is well, you can't really see. It's a pretty optical cable from Canada, Sysconcepts, the one who make the people who make the little mini funky right-angled ones for fitting DAPs to like a Hugo 2 or something like that. And I bought one of their nice ones, and it was actually Dan Clark and Mr. Speaker said, "You've got to buy one of these things. They really kick ass." And I've had, when I first, way back, I had a DAC with optical input, and it was coming out of my computer. And I thought, back at the very start, I thought, no, it's all ones and zeros, I'll just buy the cheapest one I can find, and I did. And then I got, I still have it, friends of mine were, just ignore the beeping in the background if you can hear it. Friends of mine were back in from Canberra, where I'm from. At the time, the Vandenhull dealer had a lot of stuff, and they were friends, and they'd give me stuff at a discount. So I got, I think that's where I got it from. I got a Vandenhull optocoupler, which was like going back probably over a decade, the premium, or 2 decades, probably the original premium optical cable. And I thought, this is going to make no difference, but I'll give it a go anyway. Plugged it in, completely different. Like, unbelievable. And I was like, that can't make any sense. And it does now, because I've seen, people measure, the ripple and there are really good web pages online about this, which show, the distortion that different cables have. And, optical, the original, there's a better kind of optical which you can plug stuff in with. And I've done again recently, I took a cheap Sony optical cable, which is floating around somewhere in my room, and I plugged it from my computer into the Hugo 2, and there was actually some harshness, and I said, that can't make any sense, because Rob Watts has, really excellent jitter rejection on his gear. And, but it was just sounding harsh. And then I plug in the Lifotech, and it's much better. Not Lifotech, sorry, the Sysconcepts. The Lifotech is one company that makes glass, really nice glass cables, if you're willing to risk, wrecking them. And the Vandenhull's a glass cable, and I've actually broken one of these cables because it scratched the tip of one of the plugs. And you see they're all covered on either end here, but somehow one of them got scratched. And so glass ones, you can kill them. And so there's obviously some difference there depending on the quality of the cable. And Toslink isn't really a good connector. There was a much better optical connector, the name of which I forgot, but has there's a lock-on one. And so if you find some really, really old DACs and really, really old, going back 20 years, CD players, you'll see those connectors on there, and they're way, way, way better. But why we have this crappy Toslink, I don't know. So I just became probably the easiest standard, because it's probably less hassle and less likely for customers to break it and then send their stuff back to the manufacturer. So USB is got its own problems to do with noise. It's not something sending a straight, just optical signal through. Not optical, sorry, analog, digital analog. It's not just sending that. It has all this negotiation stuff going on, and there's a lot of stuff where the chips can generate noise and send it down, or the receiving chip, because it has to do a lot more work, and generate noise inside the DAC. It's complex, so that's why I've been screwing around with these chains for so long. you know, stuff which will generate is doing as least amount of processing as possible and will generate the least electrical noise, and then some more electrical isolation in between that, and then try and make it as good as possible. It's a real kind of pain in the ass thing. So without having a scope here and being able to test and measure stuff really easily, it's just kind of guesswork. You just try stuff and think, well, that sounds better, or it doesn't. Okay, I'll have to scroll back and find out where we're at. Okay, have you heard of the Socris DAC 1541? Does it interest you? I actually still have an original Socris board, and I never ended up building the DAC. And I keep buying stuff. I think, I want to build this, and then I run out of time, and then I have to hunt for parts, and it becomes too much of a pain. The Socris DACs, yeah, I suppose if you like non-oversampling DACs, and I did have a Metrum non-oversampling DAC as well. So the Socris, now that's interesting. I have to check up on where they're at with those, but the interesting thing about having this board is you could actually put your own filters onto it. You could plug in a USB to serial adapter and actually program in your own filters. And I thought of screwing around with that, but now we have, you know, people are making R2R DACs. So, you know, if someone said, if there was some situation where it came up I could review one, I probably would. So, but, yeah, that's as far as that goes. Hi, Erie4 Jazz. So, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. Okay, hi Daniel. I've got some Bowers & Wilkins PX headphones. I wanted to buy a good high-res player. Some say Play, Astle & Kern, some say Sony. I haven't tried the Bowers & Wilkins for ages. I'd probably say buy stuff which suits, I'd say buy stuff that suits your budget. They're not so bad these days. When I started out with DAPs, it was the, other than an iPod, actually I still have is this my second iPod? I still have my second iPod sitting on my desk. I don't know why. I was doing something with it. Was the iBasso DX100, and that was the first Android-based, you know, full Android-based DAP. And that thing was shocking. The sound was good, but it took like 10 minutes to boot up. And then, the power would run, the battery would run out in, you know, 5 hours or something. So you either had a choice of, you either shut it down and then you had to wait a horrendous long time for it to start up, or you left it running and then, but just tried to fanatically remember to plug it into the charger all the time, and it was so slow. But when you played music, it was all right. And now you can buy stuff like, you saw the HiBR6, it's like $500 to $600, and it's fast. It's as fast as a smartphone, and the sound quality is excellent. I mean, there's stuff that's better than it, but not anything for most people would be excellent. Or you can buy stuff that attaches to a phone if you already have a smartphone, already have an iPhone. So I just pick stuff that suits your budget. I mean, there's not really a massive amount of difference. Probably mostly for me, if I listen to really, really high quality music, I'm going to notice a difference. But for most music that I actually listen to on Tidal, there's no point in me using a really expensive DAP just because mainstream music just isn't recorded well enough to spend thousands on. So I just go within your budget and the features that suit you. So if you don't need, a lot of them have balanced output, which I think is kind of a waste of time. You know, a good single-ended output is good. If you already have a smartphone, you don't mind having a stack, buy something like a Mojo. Sometimes, like some headphones, I think the last Bowers & Wilkins headphones I heard were a bit warm sounding, so something which has got a reputation for sounding warmer, it may not be such a good combination, where stuff that's sounding brighter might match up. I haven't heard the latest Bowers & Wilkins, so I don't know, but if they have a reputation, headphones that have a reputation for being like very bright are not going to match up too well with, say, a DAP that has a reputation for sounding a bit bright. So that's something to bear in mind, but otherwise I just pick something that you like, that looks good to you. Thoughts on Massdrop Focal cans? Those ones. Did you see my video? That's my question. I've got a video on them. Waiting for them, the wait time for them is really long. I don't know why they take so long to produce them. That's kind of odd, but I don't know. Maybe it's to do with their manufacturer, the way it's set up. I like them. They have tuned them to be kind of less thick sounding than the Ilya, and that works really well with me. So they're really kind of dynamic sounding cans. And actually, for a lot of, again, it's like I said with the DAPs, for a lot of the music I listen to, they're more fun sounding and a kind of wider soundstage kind of feeling than the Utopias. But they miss the ultra micro detail kind of thing. But a lot of the music I listen to just doesn't have that. So they're actually quite fun to listen with for me, and they're not so thick sounding. So, but do check out my video if you haven't. It's somewhere in I can't. Just wondering if I can open up a tab and find it easily, but it's in there. It's in the last like 10 videos. So better than Eon. That's a good question. Now again, I didn't have both here at the same time, but I'm planning to get the Eon. The Eon Open, and what else am I planning to get here? Other stuff around that kind of price range and compare them. Would you recommend? The Mr. Speaker stuff tends to sound darker, so it'll be a bit. Mr. Speaker stuff is hitting a little bit warmer than, and those are a little bit brighter. So I suppose it depends on what you like. If you like, Dan likes his techno, so that he tends to make his stuff a little bit darker. That's kind of an oversimplification, but he likes to have his his punchy techno sound, whereas brighter stuff doesn't always sound so good with that kind of music. Would you recommend tubes for the Utopia or the Hugo 2 sufficient? Also, when you get a Q-test in for review, I like the Hugo 2 as it is, but if the Hugo 2 doesn't suit you, like hasn't got a strong enough bass, well, Tube is just going to add bloom. I just don't think it's necessary. I mean, this is now switched off. I used to be switched on all the time, and now I've switched it off. So, no, I wouldn't bother, unless you particularly want that kind of coloration. I mean, ideally you'd buy a Hugo 2 to use with a headphone amp. Speaking of the Q-test, good timing, if you have a particular tube amp you really love and you want a more resolving DAC, then you buy a Q-test, and if you don't need to take the Q-test with you. But it's the same. It's essentially the same product, but with one has a headphone amp and one doesn't. I already did the draw. So the draw was done about half an hour ago, and if you didn't already see, let me move the paper here. The winner is Ian, I-A-I-N. That was the winner of the draw, and he won. If you missed the original, $550 Cosoi Ray, and so. If Ian is not around at the moment, I'll contact him via email. So that was at the very start. I just opened this up to the public because why the heck not? What was the op-amp mod you did on the Audio GD NFB1? I always forget the brand. Let me find it. Hold on. I have a drawer full of these things. Got it. Okay, the one that was recommended, and I already happen to have hunt these down anyway. I got a whole bunch from earphone in Tokyo. It was Muses 8920. So the Nikon doesn't have like autofocus on at the moment. So Muses 8920. So that's one from, and so you need two of those, and you put those in the. It's really you have to unscrew the volume modules and then just slide it out of the way, and then these op amps are not right next to some capacitors, so it's kind of really fiddly to get them out. So normal like op amp pulling tweezer kind of things are not so good. You have to be really careful in doing it, you don't damage anything, but I got it in there and the dynamics improved. So if I was to buy like these now, I would say, Kingwa, I'm going to send you some of these because there are heaps of fakes online. I'm going to buy these in Japan, send them over to you, and can you build me these products, but with these op amps inside? That's what I'd do personally. A Master 9 with these in here would kick ass, in my opinion. So, I haven't told Kingwood that yet. I should probably say that. He's probably seen me post it online. Okay, next. Have you heard Custom Arts? No, I haven't heard Custom Arts stuff yet. Have you heard the DT1990? I really, years overdue for talking to Beyerdynamic. I've actually met people from Beyerdynamic in Tokyo, and I wanted to review their stuff, and I have contacts and everything. This is why the whole Patreon thing, to move more towards doing that and to encourage me to do more videos, because it's just been kind of difficult to get slots in now. Next, after listening to Utopia, I can't listen to the rest of my collection. Is that kind of bad? I was a big fan of HG650. Now I don't want to put them on my head. that's kind of normal. A really funny one. You can see it. I bought these Mastrop KXX, right? K7XX, sorry. And, you know, unless I pull them out, put them on, have a look. I'll tell you the funny story. 2 funny stories about them. And cable's not been plugged in. I have 2 funny stories about them, actually. So, occasionally I put them on, plug them in, and say, actually, they don't sound so bad. And then, you know, my headphones that I got better and better, Utopias, the Susvaras, which are actually going back. And I put them on again the other day because I was asked to evaluate them and write up a quick evaluation. And I was listening bass quality. So listening and listening. Bass quality is absolute rubbish. I was just thinking, God, now these things sound so bad. So I just realized I can't listen to them anymore now. So no, it's not a surprising thing. But the second story about those is I had them sitting there for a really, really long time. And I put them on and I felt something scratching my ear, and I pulled them off and a stink bug had got was sitting inside the cups. And then my ear stank of green leafy smell for the rest of my whole side of my head had a green leafy stinky smell for the rest of the day. And so there we go, that's a funny story about K7XX. So my association with K7XX now reminds me of really crappy bass and stink bugs. So it was ridiculous. But yeah, no, that's not a surprise. Once you go up to a sufficient degree, the exception I have is another pair of headphones I'll grab out, which I think I grabbed out a while ago. I unboxed these and never reviewed them. Don't ask me why. It's just my bad. The only really kind of cheaper headphones I can listen to are these Audio Technicas. And they're the limited edition ESW9 Limited. And there's now they make a limited version and they produce a new model which was not ESW9, there's a new model and I keep forgetting the model number. But they're not the most resolving cans. The design is old. I mean, they're not the most isolating either. They've been using this basic design for so long it's not funny. But for tuning, if there's a pair of headphones which has just the tuning that totally nails it, it is these. They have the right amount of punch. They're so punchy. They're really, really fun to listen with. Not resolving, but just enough to be, you know, for most music. They're just really, really fun to listen with. And these are the only kind of cheaper headphones I really like listening with at all. That's the only reason I haven't kind of just sold them off. And, you know, if I just really want to get out and enjoy music and forget about all the hi-fi stuff, then I can bring those out. I could probably bring out the LX now, actually. They're pretty fun too. But that's that one. Okay. Have you ever auditioned the Questar CMA600i? No, sorry. A funny thing about this stuff, and I have to put this all over my videos, is I'm going to do a frequently asked questions thing. Is can I get gear advice about such and such piece of gear? It's like, if I haven't heard, there's a huge list of all my gear on the About page on my website. So let me just pop that up again. So you're going to see let me just put the website up again. On the website, you'll see there's About, top left, next to the kind of search thing. Click on that. There are now 2 Abouts because good old Bruco from Headfi has joined, and he's going to be writing reviews. You can see his reviews just popped up on the screen there. Look at that and check if the thing you're interested in is in my list. If it's not in there, I probably haven't heard it. Or if it's at a show, I won't even, yeah. So, because show impressions are really crap. I've had show impressions that just completely different when I got stuff home. So, check out there first before asking, because it's just kind of, I get these questions all the time. What do you think of X? It's like I've never heard it. And repeating myself, you know, after you repeat yourself 1,000 times, it becomes kind of irritating. But what do you think of the Cayenne IHA6? Never heard it. Have you heard 62 Audio's TR-IMs? No. I was gonna listen to them at the show. And I thought I'll come back because there's a huge queue. I forgot to come back. You know, ESW 990H. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, there's a new ESW. But I really like the ESW series. There are many reasons they're kind of crappy now because, you know, old design, blah blah blah. But holy heck, Audio-Technica sometimes just really nails stuff. A lot of their stuff just doesn't, but a lot of the stuff sometimes just come out with some stuff. These were the best. Everything else I don't really like, except these, and I've had a couple of other models which I liked, and a lot of ones which I just thought, what the heck were they thinking? But I don't know. Audio-Technica is very Japanese, and they're very strange. And I've never met any engineers, and so I don't understand what they're doing. They all had marketing staff who had no idea, so I never bothered really kind of pursuing Audio-Technica, and I should, because they were really keen to actually have me review stuff. How did you end up in Japan? A woman was involved, that's all you need to know. Any plans for getting ZMF flagships? You're the second person to ask. The idea has crossed my mind. I know where to find Zach. I could probably ask him. Maybe. So, again, once all this stuff kind of moves where it has to, then I probably will start getting more headphones in. More stacks, more planars, possibly more IMs. Not sure yet, but the kind of stacks and planars are interesting me at the moment. The stuff that I'm already kind of familiar with, because Bluetooth stuff is really fascinating, but I put up Bluetooth IMs or headphones on the channel, I get like not much reaction. I put up Utopias, Sennheiser, Hi-Fi Man, suddenly I get a bazillion reviews. So obviously people who watch me are interested in this kind of stuff, so that's what I'm going to do reviews on. And we're out of questions. So I'll give this, if people don't have any other questions, 15 more minutes, I guess. And do I have anything else interesting here? My next review thing, I keep forgetting to do this. I'll show you this cool thing. I'm long overdue for actually talking about this. This is a neat way of wrapping your IMs. I'll just do a review on it later, but I'll unravel them now. So, more or less, this is going to be funky. It's a series of magnets you put on your IMs. Well, they're designed for iPods, but I'm waiting for them to they only fit kind of thin cables at the moment. And they're kind of permanently attached. In other words, they clip on and they don't clip off. And then all you do is, I've just pulled them off now, and of course I can't do it. They just clip, you just go like this. Gonna do it. Yeah, I just pulled them off now. I haven't touched these in like months, so if I screw this up, that's why. And then, actually it'd be good if you have like an expensive cable and they made one to fit an expensive cable, because then you wouldn't like damage your expensive IM cable. But there, that's just a neat way of folding up your IMs. They're called Snap Buds, and they have a feature where they can customize them with anything you like, and they're going to eventually have where you can actually get a single set with any kind of logos or designs you want on them. At the moment, they're manufactured, like the people who manufacture use the same manufacturer that does all the football stuff in the US. So it's like, oh, I need 100 of these or 1,000 of these tomorrow. They can do 100 or 1,000 in like a day. So they're pretty interesting, and I'm like way overdue for doing these for various reasons. But that I should do a video on. That's a pretty cool thing. If you don't mind having like permanently attached magnets on your buds or IMs, but they're kind of designed for iPhone earbuds. But anyway, that's something different while I wait for questions. Xylento! I did try the Xylentos. I wanted to review them, and that's again, I'm like years overdue doing anything with Beyerdynamic. I've talked to them. I really want to review them because they sounded really cool. They sounded like something I'd like. Anything new with Audio GD in your collection? No. What's come out lately has been the new stuff, the R2R stuff, which seems to be, well, at least with the R2R7 seems pretty good. Can magnets damage the BA drivers though? They're not really that strong. I mean, I don't know. Good question though. But I mean, where they are on the cable, unless they suddenly came into really super close contact, but I don't think so. And I don't think, they're not strong magnets, they're quite weak magnets. They're obviously cheap, they're like $10 a set or something. Do different cables in the Utopias matter? Yeah. Now this came up with two things. I didn't mind the stock cable actually, as things go. But people seem to be getting improvements with aftermarket cables, and it's more so that, this is something I've discussed before, stock cables on headphones are designed to be customer proof. So the customer's least likely to screw them up. And that's why they're coated in PVC, they have over mold connectors, they have to be mass manufactured. Custom cables are hand manufactured, they're hand soldered, they don't have over mold connectors unless you're talking about Campfire Audio, who's now got their, I think they've got their own machine. I think some of the other manufacturers have their own machine. I guess Moon Audio must, because now they're doing over molded connector kind of stuff. Or or they're working with another manufacturer. I don't know. I haven't asked. And so the custom cables in are all handmade, except say something like Kimber cable, which they use machines. They use much more advanced techniques than the hand manufacturers do. And so they have to be a little bit more careful. I mean, all this stuff uses... Let's get the stuff out of the way here so I can show it. You know, there's heat shrink over all the cables. So you do have to take more care of everything. And so it's a kind of different... So they don't have to worry. They can use whatever materials they like. If the materials aren't as strong or they're weaker, they can use whatever they feel sounds sonically best. And again, yeah, cable stuff, I know. They can use whatever they feel is best. And without having to worry... Well, they do have to worry about customers screwing up their cables. That happens. But it's a different kind of deal. So I think the manufacturers just use what they feel is the best they can do, and obviously, you know, given that they have to manufacture a large quantity of them. Any plans, Audio GD DAC, you have there? The R2R1, yeah, a lot of people are asking about that. I guess I'm going to be getting an R2R1. I've got the 1 amp, and I'm going to have to get some focal clears and do a mid-range, kind of mid-high range system review. Better options, I don't know. Again, I haven't compared all the mid-range DACs, so it'd be interesting to do. I thought of asking Shit Audio to review their other stuff, but, you know, maybe I will. That kind of stuff, they don't... I mean, they could easily just say, no, it's not necessary. We just sell a crap ton of stuff. Why do we need reviews of it? Maybe they'll say yes. Does it matter if a headphone cable is shielded or not? I'm not the best person to ask about, like, fine details of headphone cables, but for shielding, okay, with noise, little I know about the physics of it. If you have a piece of wire, that can act as an aerial. So if you actually have an antenna, it is a straight piece of wire of some kind, or in some configuration that will pick up the signals of a particular frequency out of the air. So I'll tell you a really old story that happened to me back in the dial-up internet days. My father was getting dropouts always on his modem, and it was a 56K modem. This is going back a way. If you're much younger than me, you're not gonna have any memory of this. And of course, this was an analog modem. And what happened is I had a long, old-style phone cable going into the wall, and used 4 wires in it, which inside a flat piece of PVC, and 4 wires, PVC wires inside another flat PVC, and you strung it out there, and he was always getting dropouts. Now I knew these things could pick up noise because this was really, really slow, antiquated stuff. So what I did is, again, hold on, let me find an example. I kind of twisted it. I twisted the living daylights out of the cable. I twisted it until it was like a spiral. The dropout stopped. So in terms of shielding, I mean, this stuff is like braided in a way that it will resist. The wires are kind of going in not a straight line, so it should pick up less noise. The people who are really into cable design say like the tightness of braids make a difference and blah, 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 blah. The Deta cables are super tightly braided, and apparently that's the most effective. Again, that's kind of like too exotic for me to know about. But I have talked to people about this, and they explained it at some point, and it's kind of gone like, okay. But there's all sorts of stuff in there I just don't know enough about. So I don't think you need to shield stuff, although you could conceivably, and I have it here because this is what people use. People who want to DIY their own cheap cables use like stuff like Belden or whatever, like microphone cable. This is like microphone cable. I was actually about to make a cable out of this. And those of you who know about my microphone noise problems, well, you notice they disappeared. And that's because it's not in this plug. I'm using a different cable at the moment because it's not going to the Sony. I actually have the microphone next to my Sony. And I'll turn the webcam back on. Hold on. Okay, now if you're used to hearing... Now, let me just hold this up to the webcam. Do you see this? This is a custom cable made for me for plugging in a DAP to a portable headphone amp. And it's braided. And suddenly all the noise is gone. I was using kind of cheap... I was using cheap, like, just headphone cables and other stuff because I needed... The mic was like here and the computer's over there. And I had one really long cable, and if I moved it near to or far away from something, you get different noise patterns. And I was grounding stuff and screwing around endlessly. So I'm actually just about to make another cable using some mic cable. So, rating, I don't know. Some people have said try putting ferrites on cables. It's probably a bad idea. It's going to interfere. They're designed to kind of cancel noise when you have like a digital signal. Probably if you have a cable from someone who has, or a company that has made a lot of cable, a lot of headphone cables, they're probably going to have experimented with a lot of this stuff, and just whatever they seem to go with seems to be okay. Okay, long answer to a short question. Any recommendation on who makes good quality Litz braided headphone cables? Now, this is not so much a recommendation as like, this is who I get cables from because I've done so before. Norn Audio. But anyone who makes Litz cables is fine, and probably the easiest thing to do is check who doesn't have a really long queue. Toxic Cables at one point had a 1-year waiting list. Norn at one point, he's just caught up. I was just talking to Trevor the other day and he said he caught up. He has like an almost 0 waiting list. There are some other people who make Litz cables now, I have no idea. But if you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to order a Litz cable and it's going to have to wait like 6 months, well, that's crazy. So just, I guess, I've never heard of a bad cable, anyone making bad cables. I mean, it's like any manufacturer, they're aiming to make good stuff, so it should be good. Utopia upgrade cable under $500. I like the Moon Audio stuff, I like Norn Audio stuff, because that's what I've used. So I can recommend either of those, but I've never heard of a bad option in that either. I think the Utopia one from both, you can get stuff under $500. IM cables, smooth the upper treble. No, I haven't. Smoother stuff is going to be Moon Audio out of what I've experienced. But yeah. Can you hear differences 320 kpps and FLAC? Short answer, I wouldn't take a DBT on it. I think I'd fail. But I've switched from 320 kpps 320 to FLAC, or I've heard stuff which is like, wait, something sounds wrong here, and then I've gone through and gone, wait, oh, this turned out to be MP3, not FLAC. And it kind of sounds very, very subtly flatter. So, depending on the music, of course, and maybe even the encoder. But, so, it's below the threshold of what I'd describe as being stuff I'd really actually guarantee I could make out. But sometimes, you know, when in audio, I'll change something and I'll think this hasn't made any difference, and I'll change it back and it's like, wait, something doesn't feel right. And it's really, really low threshold stuff, so that's kind of getting down there. But on my system, I will use lossless. So it's just not something I'm going to muck around with when I've paid this much money. I made it to the live stream. Oh, it's Drunk Saru. Good to see you. That's all right, everyone's late, even me. It's like, you're the same kind of lateness as I have with my reviews. I'm shocking by my own standards. Do you ever let visitors in your gear room? Yes, I have. I had photos too, way back. Who did I have here last? I had a visitor, just a couple of people who, no one anyone would know. Just people who I met off HeadFi. There's a guy here actually who's exports stuff from Japan for people who want to buy stuff in Japan, like off Yahoo auctions. And especially from like people who just will not sell to overseas people. That's called Kuboten, Kuboten, and he lives down the road, and so we've kind of gone to each other's place and listened to gear, and I've lent him gear and stuff like that. And actually, he was the first person who he had a whole Stax collection, 007s, was it 4050s? You know, the ones they used in MRI rooms because they didn't have magnets in them. A whole bunch of Stax and Sony R10s and everything. I went to his place once. We just had a big meet. This was years and years and years ago. He sold it all off now though, so no chance of an R10 review. Have you tried the Dita Dream? No, I haven't tried the latest Ditas. So some people said the H800 is on par with the Utopia in terms of resolution. No. Short answer, no. Do you speak Japanese? My Japanese is shocking. How long did it take to learn? How much time do you have? Okay, if I sat here all day and studied Japanese, I could probably learn in a few months. But a lot of it's kind of interacting with people and having a conversation, learning to read and write. If you think that that elementary school students take about 6 years of studying to learn to read and write it, let's say you could easily do in 5, you know, for an adult, probably you could do it in 5 years of intense study. You could easily become pretty good, especially if you could have someone to talk to in Japanese, which you now can online. Do you have any plans to try review the MIT cables and their amp? I could probably ask them. If I see the MIT guys in Tokyo, I could probably ask them. If they're at the Tokyo show or at Singapore, I could probably ask. I'm kind of reluctant to do cables for obvious reasons. Now I'm sort of even more cautious about, is it just because the connectors are better? Have you heard the Massdrop Plus, supposedly the best IEM on a 1K USD? No, but I could probably ask. I should probably ask to do more Massdrop stuff, actually. The thing about Massdrop stuff is now I was kind of reluctant because it's like, oh, this sounds great, but you're going to have to wait 3 months to get it. No, I'll pass on that. No, but I do like the Massdrop guys. I've talked to Will in person, and he told me how Massdrop started up. That was really fascinating. So, but I think what they do is really, really good, and you can't see it now. There have been times when, like, I'll walk around and like half the stuff I'm wearing is from Massdrop. Belts, socks, shoes. What else did I get from Massdrop? Not so much gear, audio gear, but just like clothes and stuff. I bought stuff off Massdrop, which I otherwise would never have a chance to get over here in Japan. How often do you rotate headphones? Like rotate as in daily use, or rotate as in change. At the moment, I don't want to change from the Utopias. I'm pretty happy with those. But it took a while to knock, say, the HD800s off my list of preferred listening headphones. But they had a really I had a really love-hate relationship with those. I think every headphone, if you're talking about this general, you know, I got sick of listening to these and changed. Everything was kind of imperfect for a long time. If I was to start completely again, I'd buy the latest entire top-of-the-line stack system and a Hugo 2 or Dave or something and be done with it, but because that just hit the spot for everything when I tried it in Tokyo. But in general, like daily rotation, I just listen to the Utopias, or I have speakers you can't see just in front of me, depending on the time of day. So that's about it. Do tubes matter for Utopias, or SS is fine? It depends on the quality of the gear. Most stuff is the quality of it. The resolution of the system you have is most important, not tubes or SS. Tubes most of the time, and I say most, just add kind of euphoric distortion. And again, it's a thing. If the tuning is maybe a touch bass light for some people, if that's a bit too bass light for you, then you know, is trying to fix it with the other gear is kind of a bit silly in a way. But it's resolution. I think the main thing about the Utopias is resolution. They're kind of a little bit too, you know, for a lot of music I listen to, again, I'd probably grab the LX. Clear Professional. Do you understand Focal? Nope. Never haven't talked to them. If I meet Focal people, I'll talk to them and ask them. Well, maybe people were asking for like a particular tuning. I guess if there's a professional version, you get people who do mastering, as far as I know, who ask particularly for headphones with a particular, you know, it has to be this kind of neutral or something like that, and which sometimes comes out with some very odd results. But I don't know. I know nothing about pro stuff, and I'd like to learn more. So I guess it was just a response to, you know, a particular market, maybe. Maybe they just know a lot of professionals who just want to use headphones with that kind of resolution. Who knows? What do you predict in 2018 portable audio focus will be? Portable audio, it's going to get better and cheaper. That's still going to head that direction. We have a new Hibi R3 coming out. That's going to be a little cute, but probably, hopefully, very fast DAP. I think if there are any significant changes, it might be that, you know, like if you want to look futuristic, you have the Chord Mojo and Poly system, and that's $1,200, and that gives you separation, wireless separation from your phone without using Bluetooth. I think, you know, there's another one from Lotu. Is it Lotu? I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. That Chinese company that made those little, a very expensive DAP and a very cheap DAP. And then they have made this little DAP, which is not a DAP at all, but it's controlled by your smartphone. And I think that was the most sensible option. So if you're looking futuristic, I think that would be better. And the technology to do that. I mean, really in the consumer market, you have Bluetooth headphones. And actually, I flew somewhere there. The last time I flew somewhere, I regret not taking just these Bluetooth noise cancelling headphones. I think for the average, the regular consumer, this kind of thing still kicks ass. This and the Sonys, and I haven't heard the latest Bose. I just never bother with that company for obvious reasons. This is still, I think it's getting to the point where I could happily buy a pair of noise cancelling Sonys, or just take these with me for the most part for on planes or general usage, and just not care, and it'd be good enough. Which is for me is pretty amazing. I tried using IEMs on planes again. I just hated it. Why do I use IEMs on the plane? Put the IEMs in. And then you put noise cancelling headphones over there, and you get an even better result. But, and so for portable audio, I mean the whole IEM thing is an enthusiast market thing. Although it's kind of a bit weird, but I think the lower end of the enthusiast market is going to be eaten up by this stuff, in my opinion. It's just, don't know, but the technology is just getting smaller and better in this kind of stuff. So it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be Bluetooth, I reckon, for most people. Are you a BA or DD kind of guy? Now, dynamic drivers, the treble is so much better. I've switched kind of more inclined towards dynamic drivers. I mean, the RE2000s, as much as they get knocked for their price, I actually think are up there as $2,000 IEMs, and their treble is just fantastic, and they're dynamic driver. So, probably at the moment dynamic driver. And it's not to say that I might not find a pair of high-end dynamic driver IEMs that go, I mean, by balanced driver IEMs that might go, oh wow, these are great. But I think it's just overall things are improving across the board. Thoughts concerning DACs? I like the Hugo too. I'm sticking with that. Short answer. But I prefer not to have to think about it. And a good DAC, I shouldn't have to think about, oh, I can hear a bit of Sabre glare, or I can hear a bit of this. But the latest Sabre DACs I've heard have been really fantastic. They've not sounded glary. Usually I prefer the resistor ladders. They do have a slight subtle euphoria, which make you really want to listen. Now, this is kind of technically not as good as technically as the Hugo 2, but still listening with the R2, R7. You put it on. The first time I put it on, it's just like, I want to listen to music and not stop. And they have that magic quality about them. It makes it really enjoyable. And you could say it's like tube amps too. They have a kind of slight harmonic euphoria to them. And that whole system, listening to music is about enjoyment. I like the Chord DACs because they balance that. They have extremely objectively designed on the one hand, but at the same time, that objectiveness leads to a really, really excellent, sound quality. You can hear very precise depth to music. With Utopias at least, you can hear very precisely a soundstage image. You can hear uncanny levels of detail. And at the highest level, the Dave, that just like I could feel the music, which is, I never felt that before. It's like it had been injected into me, and that was incredible. So in terms of preference, there are different, there's a bit more to it than that. But I think that chip DACs, like high-end chip DAC kind of seems a bit silly to me, if that makes any sense. Bring shooting muffs to IEM auditions for better isolation. You are clever. Yes, good idea. I think what I'm going to do in the next Tokyo show is I'm going to say, go to the Sony booth and steal one of, temporarily borrow one of their pairs of, or contact the Sony guys. Can I borrow a pair of noise cancellation headphones for 2 days? And they'll go, why? And I say, so for listening to IEMs at the show. You are clever. You've given me an idea. I'm going to do that too. Not shooting muffs, but it's a good idea. Okay. I've heard Bandai-san, the designer of EX1000, is working on the successor to the EX1000. I'll ask. I'll ask. I don't know Bandai-san. If I've met him, I don't remember. I know Nao Tsunoda, the guy who does the guy who's always like publicly kind of one of the public top engineers. That was a really funny story actually. I found this old receipt. I don't know where I've got it floating around. I had a receipt for my original Sony Walkman from 1991, and I found it. And I posted it on Facebook, And now goes, hey, that's when I joined. That's the same year I joined Sony. So there's a kind of funny irony there. Any hybrid IMs? The OnePlus 2s. I remember really liking those. So I don't know if he's still making IMs anymore. Translucent. If Gavin, I haven't talked to him in ages. He got really into the IM scene, and now I think he switched to cameras. But I don't know. He might still be making IMs in a few years. He made some really nice combo IMs, which I really liked. And he made them for his own satisfaction. So, which was kind of, he didn't intend to appeal to anyone except really himself. But they still sounded excellent. And he was, he had a really high-end system at home too. Hugo 2 is 2.2K5, and yes, it is for a reason. What's your thought to the Harman curve? I don't have any thoughts about the Harman curve. Actually, I think the Harman curve, it kind of matches my preferences, because the old style idea, like when planers, when the Odyssey LCD2s came out, your curves would look like flat, 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 flat. Then just after about 1K, it'd go pew. Now, for me, that completely flat bass sounded too thick. And it was the same with IMs that were tuned that way, like the Roxannes. For me, there should have been a bit of a dip at 200. And when I put a bit of a dip at 200 in, it sounded more natural to me. And the Harman curve is kind of similar. So actually it does make some kind of sense to me. So a lot of research discovering it took me 5 seconds with an EQ to discover is kind of funny. I shouldn't knock research like that. It was really, really serious research. But for me, it was like, sometimes you know something. I've had this with medical stuff. I felt that the common wisdom about certain medical conditions, medical stuff I've had has been, doesn't seem to match me. And then I've gone and felt that the reality was X, and then years later I read research, and the researchers have discovered X, and it has exactly matched my experience. So I thought, they've discovered what I already knew, and I think the Harman curve is a lot like that too. How many hours do you sit in that chair? A couple. Today's a bit longer. It depends what work I'm doing. If I'm doing work on this stuff, it's going to be longer. I'm out at teaching all day, so kind of teaching, come back, have lunch, come up, prepare for afternoon teaching, go out and do that. So it varies from can be 2 to 4 hours a day sometimes. What is your take on sound science? Why don't designers do talk about their approach, and there's two things to that. The designers I know you talk Nao Tsunoda from Sony. The first time I approached him, he was very open, and his engineers were very open to talking about this stuff. Audio GD is very open to talking about this stuff. Rob Watts is just like, you can spend hours reading everything he's posted, and it's all 30 years of his research, and he's posted a lot of the information online. Not in enough detail to reproduce this stuff, but enough to give you an idea. The problem is that a lot of people are very simplistic thinking, and this is kind of being rude to people in general. But I just had an argument today with people online about common issues in society, and people are very reactionary and simplistic thinking. And it's like, as I said earlier in this, I don't know if you were around for it, we're talking about cables, optical cables. There we go. So back when I started with optical cables, I thought it's ones and zeros. What kind of difference could it make? I went out and bought a cheap optical cable, plugged it into my DAC, and I was fine with that. And then I got a more expensive one, and I tried it, and there was a sound. No, I got a slightly more expensive one than the cheapest one I could find, and it sounded different. And I was like, that can't be right. So my attitude is not something's wrong. It's like, what don't I understand that there's something missing? And the same thing was with this Utopia and the Hugo video I just did. To me, the Studio 6 at first sounded more dynamic, but Rob Watts insisted his amp's good enough. And I'm thinking, well, this is the experience I've had. I'm sticking with it. And then I found, comparing again, there wasn't as much difference. And the only thing that had changed is the cable. So now I talked to manufacturers and talked about issues with connectors and plugs and what have you. And so maybe it was just simply a technical issue. So the thing is with science in general is people think of science as this is true and this is not true. That is not science. Science is, from this evidence, we believe this to be correct, and our expectation, given all these factors, is that it's very correct or moderately correct, or there's grades of it, and there's there are some absolutes, but not quite as many as people expect. So science is like this attitude of thinking, we've had this experience, why are we having it? Is it something in here? Is it something out here? And trying to eliminate things and work out what's going on is what science is about. My father was a scientist. He wrote books, and I'm going to go, so I'll plug this, give me 2 seconds. Drop stuff on the floor too. Okay, I'm back. Now, it would help if I put them both around the room. Okay, this one's out of print at the moment. It's called The Science of Life. I should try and get it back into print actually, but it's about it's about biology. My father was a biological scientist, and I should get it put back into ebook form, but I will organise that. This is the one you can actually buy. It's called Science, Myth or Magic. And yes, I'm going to shamelessly plug this, and you can get it on ebook form on Amazon. And essentially, it's about what is science, and it's about biological science, not electrical science. So how science relates to life in general. And I don't agree with everything my father says in 100%, but this was his second or third to last book, and he wrote it a few years. It was the sum of all he'd done in terms of, he did radio shows about science for ordinary people to understand, and not just complex subjects like biological science is very, very complex. And he put a lot of the effort into this and died a few years after he wrote it. And it was based on a lot of these radio shows he did, where he wanted to explain, in both these books actually, for ordinary people what science was, because people, news reporters will report on science, and they report, you don't see it so much now, people are a bit more thinking, but the reporters will be like, this is true, this is false. Scientists have said this is true, when science doesn't work like that. So he tried to explain like a lot of stuff about, what science, about science in general for ordinary people to understand. It's very anti-superstition and survival for humanity kind of thing. My thoughts on it are kind of complex, but still, if you want to read about, from an actual scientist, what science is about, this is available online on Amazon. Science, Myth or Magic. So there we go. I'll try and get the other one put into ebook form too, because it was a good book as well. So those are my thoughts on science. It's like not as simple and straightforward as it always sounds. How loud do you listen to music? Mid-level, about 80 dBs, I think. 70 to 80 most of the time. It depends. Sometimes I find listening really quietly with high-quality headphones good, because even though the quieter sounds are quieter, sometimes having like acoustic music playing kind of really delicately is something I really enjoy. You just made me swap my optical cable. I purchased a good quality one some time ago. Yeah, let me know. Sometimes you will, sometimes you might not. Depends on the gear. And without a lot of measuring equipment, you can't know. We just have to guess and try stuff. And and that is our science with this audio gear. We try stuff. I plug stuff in, listen to it, see if we feel it makes a difference. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's not. Who cares? I mean, if you enjoy it, who cares? It's not going to. You're not going to change the world. You're not responsible for affecting anyone if you feel better or worse about how you listen. It's entirely up to you. Loud noises. Where do I teach? I teach in elementary schools. I teach English to elementary school students at the moment. We know your last name now. Yeah, my last name has been online for years now. So I think I'll wrap that up there. If any last questions before I go off? Nothing coming up. I don't have any cool stuff to show. Nothing more particularly cool to go out yet. I'm just going to plug myself while I wait for everyone as my last bits and pieces. So I've already plugged my father's book. Well, first I would like to actually thank people who did become my patrons, even if they're sending $1 a month or whatever. That's helpful to pay my electricity bill. But I'd like to do more videos, and if it's helpful to people, if people are enjoying it, I like to do that too. It's really interesting. I've been in the hobby now I've actually been in the hobby since the 1990s, if we count headphones going all the way back there. And I always wanted a good hi-fi system, and I bought stuff over the years and sold stuff off. But now making the videos thing, I seem to be people enjoy that. And if you do can contribute, you know, a couple of bucks a month for me to enjoy stuff. I got stuff I want to give away. A lot of the stuff that I have that I don't need, the manufacturers don't want back. And again, today I just gave away this, which is worth $550. I have, you know, probably a few $1,000s worth of stuff. I just don't want it here. And you say, oh, manufacturers give you all this expensive stuff. Not really. It sits in my cupboard doing nothing. And I'd rather give it to people who are, you know, are going to help support me and maybe build a small community of people who have enthusiasts. And it's fun. And that's the fun part of it. And, you know, going to the shows and meeting people and talking to manufacturers and other enthusiasts, that's really excellent. And that's where the fun is. And making this a fun hobby and being able to make something that people enjoy and that I enjoy doing, you know, is something I want to do. So if you're interested in doing that, please do, again, head over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Currawong, and, you know, offer to pledge $1 or $2 a month would be really fantastic. Okay, last questions. What headphone stands do you use? Okay, what can we see here? Okay, in the middle is like a backwards sitting Stax one, because it had planers on it. It was kind of rude. I didn't know what the Stax logo is showing. I had Hi-Fi planers sitting on it. The other ones are called Codia, C-O-D-I-A, and what happened was the Korean manufacturer, it's a Korean manufacturer, and they make this wood furniture, and they made headphone stands, and someone said, can we buy these? And they said, oh, I don't have a means to do it, so he put them on eBay for people to buy. I haven't checked if they're online now. So, Codia. I'll type that into the chat, actually, so you can all check out if they're still available online. I had Koss holder phones. That's the plastic ones you can see just there. I think they're discontinued. I haven't seen them again. The other ones I had, Sennheiser made these funky ones, these clamp ones. They don't sell them anymore, but there's other manufacturers, I guess probably from the same OEM that makes them under different names. They're just clamped to these wood things. I had an Alctron one sitting here, which can be clamped on in all different directions. It's designed to clamp to music stands and other things, and it can be the headphone stand part can be put in different directions. And I have an imitation of that, which is kind of crappy, sitting over here. These are funky because you can got little hooks on here. We can put, I don't know how well you can see that. Oh, there you go. You can see now. You can hang IMs or the cables on there. So the Alctron just disappeared offline. I wanted to buy another one, and this cheap, crappy imitation was no good, not so good. And yeah, I'm hanging $6,000 headphones on a cheap, crappy imitation of a headphone stand. Yeah, I'm good. What else do I have? The good old Audio-Technica ones, which are sort of like the Sennheiser, but I don't like them as much. What else? That's about it. It's very, very random. And then some stuff from, what are they called? Brainwaves. Sent me stuff for review. And I have a hooker under my desk. This is my ongoing joke. Brainwave hooker. I've got a hooker under my desk. Okay. That's what I've got floating around here. So I've got probably I could be a headphone stand collector. Minimum level of sound quality for the average music enthusiast needs to enjoy music to its fullest. Answer: my car stereo. Well, no. Well, what's fullest? Thank you, Ultra Dude 54. That's very kind. That's very awesome. That's tricky. What kind of music do you listen to? I think it has to be graded towards like music quality. So let's take mainstream compressed music, and then we set a kind of level, and then we take mainstream semi-compressed or not compressed music, like maybe older stuff. I was listening to Black Sabbath actually. That's still fairly compressed, but they had a couple of songs out there that were less compressed. On the one on the Paranoid album was Planet Caravan. I don't listen to Black Sabbath normally, but that one song is kind of this really, really mellow song, and so maybe you could get a bit higher. And then you got classical, really high quality Decca recordings. You've got binaural and stuff, and then you get a big jump higher again. So I think you have to level it against music. But for modern mainstream stuff, I think most people enjoy stuff that is tuned really well all round. So these Audio-Technicas. Audio-Technica Circumaural Woodies is probably about spot on for the kind of average, for the average person. Or modern Bluetooth headphones. Where did I put them? These are getting really good, like the Sony Bluetooth headphones as well. These are the Divas, the Feel Divas. Cheesiest named headphones I've ever had, but excellent sounding. So kind of noise cancelling Bluetooth, I think will cover most people. And then the higher end stuff, you know, you could get, you know, more exotic, but it's coming to the point where it's getting down near the high end stuff is getting closer and closer to $1,000 without going super exotic and super detailed and super high res, like spending, you know, over $5,000 on the system. So that's kind of my long answer to a short question. So yeah, so we're kind of heading to that point where you can just buy Bluetooth headphones and be happy. And my 2007 self, when I first joined HeadFi, what I wish is that those Sony Bluetooth headphones existed, the 1000X. I wish they existed 10 years ago. If they'd existed 10 years ago, I would have bought a pair and then done. Okay, so if I was starting again now, that's what I would have nailed it just with one pair of headphones, whereas before I didn't. Cheers, thank you KVN864. That's extremely kind and extremely helpful. So I might have to wrap it up, but if you do have any last questions, there's still 24 people online. Very, very last questions. I should grab all these questions actually and do a frequently asked questions thing. I'll do some FAQ videos, but that was a lot. Jordan, I think that was a very good question. The level of sound quality. So the problem is we can't measure sound quality in music so much. I mean, you would have to, when you made a recording, you would have to put in some kind of sound, have you heard when they do measurements for headphones and stuff, they play sweeps and other stuff and tones and whatever. If at the beginning of when a recording was made, they played a series of sweeps and tones, and then that got processed along with the music, and then at the end you could determine how much was lost. That I just pulled out of the top of my head. But it would be interesting if they did that, and then we could determine what kind of loss we were experiencing when music was... Well, they could do multiple tones. One played in the studio where the singer is or something like that if it's appropriate, and then others like added to the music before it was added to one of the, you know, added as an extra track in a multi-track recording, and then as it's all get processed through together, and then see how much loss we get. Or processed along with the same amount of processing that, say, the vocals get or what have you, and then see how much loss you get going out to the end. Would be really interesting. This is just entirely off the top of my head. I have no idea, but the only way we could work out if there was some way to measure how much loss music has, and then correspond that somehow to equipment. It'd be a very interesting thing to experiment with. 80 and 920 make to the M9 sound. I haven't changed the M9. I did it in the 1 amp. The M9 ones are soldered in, so I can't change it unless I'm going to pull the whole thing apart and risk destroying it. Made the 1 amp sound more dynamic because it sounds a little bit too mellow, a touch too mellow. It's only a tiny touch, but the 8920 suddenly it sounded more kind of lively and dynamic. So even though these op amps should not make any difference, they're not used for amplification. They're just used for DC offset. For some reason, either they are truly neutral because they have really low distortion, or the 8920s are, I don't know what's going on without being able to measure it, but it sounded better. So that was just my thought. How does the Clear compare to Utopia? I haven't got Clears in. Everyone and their dog has been asking me to review Clears. I shall work on it. Do you collect anything besides headphones and headphone stands? I don't collect headphone stands. This is just a consequence of having so much stuff here. Do I collect anything else? I had a joke about collecting stuff, but no. I collect ideas. That's kind of a joke. But no, it's true. I collect way too much stuff in my head. I'm still okay if you have last questions. I made coffee, and I haven't drunk it yet because I've been talking. Oh well. Do I collect anything else? I should do a room tour. I collect crap. Jackets and bags. So I used to joke to my inner woman I collect jackets and bags. You won't see that yet. I'll do some quick videos and actually clothing and bags, actually, because it's stuff I want to do, which is kind of cool. Stuff that sometimes I find stuff that is so cool, it's not related to headphones, but it's just like whoever the hell made it, it just did such a good job. Really, really thought about what they were doing. I want to show it, so I'll do that in the future. Thank you, Jordan. That's really super super helpful. Favorite IEMs? Tricky. That's kind of tricky at the moment. Okay, you get to see my. Since you've all been so cool, I'll show you. This is a Van Nuys case. Van Nuys is a Japanese company. I should probably turn on the webcam. It's probably easy to see because the focus is out. Then the Nikon cannot dynamically focus like the Sony. It's this company. If you ever see this, it's Van Nuys as in the location, but I think vannuys.jp. If you're a bag addict, don't visit their site. You'll die. You cannot imagine. You'll visit their site and you're like, how do they have so many variations? This is a cool bag because it has Velcro inserts and you can set stuff up as you need it. You can slide them up and down and you can fit daps in there or make them bigger, smaller. They make bigger versions, they make smaller versions, they make versions where you can take the end pieces out and have stuff sticking out. So it's vannuys.jp. You know how to spell Van Nuys, as in the location. I'll do the webcam thing again so you can have a quick look. This is really cool. The .jp isn't on there, but you'll find it. When you'll know when you hit the site. You don't need to know Japanese to read it. I'll tell you that much. The guys are super cool. They're doing the case for the Hugo too, and really your mind will be blown with the amount of stuff they have on their website. So this is the IEMs I have at the moment. Yeah, okay. You asked me what IEMs I like. I think the Andromedas are probably my general all-round favorite. And I've got the funky ALO cable on there now. I got the DETA cables floating around in here too, which is very, very handy because I can switch the plug just to switch between balanced and single-ended on a DAP. I haven't done that enough. I've been a bit slack. I liked the Ultimateers reference monitors. Now they're called the Ultimateers reference remastered with different tuning, but the kind of low bass is a bit lacking in those. The Vegas I thought were really kick-ass if you really like thunderous bass. Hi-Fi-Man's RE2000s, which are actually still sitting in here if I don't drop everything out on the floor. Apart from the fact that treble can be too bright for a lot of music, with acoustic music, these are kind of the best dynamics I've ever heard. Hi-Fi-Man, despite copying a lot of flack, actually did do a really fantastic job in the tuning, even if it's not quite as beautifully made as, say, like the Campfire IEMs. But probably I would, if I was going for IEMs now, so far, and of course there's a ton of stuff I haven't heard. I like what Ken's doing with Campfire Audio. He's really, really focusing on quality on that. So, but you know, there's a heap of manufacturers out there I haven't even touched. I haven't even tried this stuff, who I really need to investigate, because there are a lot of people out there doing a really hard work to make really good quality stuff, and there's probably stuff out there that would even blow me away as well. But I can understand, say, why Ken has set a standard with the Andromedas. Thank you, Eddie, for I guess I hope I pronounced that right, for the $10. That is super helpful. Can I borrow Folklore Utopias? You'd have to live in Japan. Yeah, if you were nearby. Have you heard any of the real earbud like VEZen? Yeah, I did it at Tokyo. They actually was like $10, whatever, $10, $20 earbuds were actually pretty cool. So yeah, although that some of that cheap stuff actually was pretty surprised by the quality for the price. So the OEM part of that probably has to do with, where are they floating around? Here we go. I actually saw at Fostex the original iPod earbuds, the 5 millionth pair. I think it was a 5 millionth pair. They had them in a little wood box and stuff like that. And that was a Foster. Foster is the OEM for Fostex. The actual company, not the... Fostex just make the consumer stuff. Foster, the actual company. Fostex, that's kind of... well, one's a smaller version of the other, but Fostex have like the engineers that do stuff for Foster. And those earbud drivers have become so generic and available everywhere that I can guess that's why you can get it for $10. They're just, you know, super mass produced. And so those earbuds, yeah, well, for whatever, 10, 20 bucks, yeah, were pretty excellent. I never bothered to review them because it's like, who needs to review $10 stuff? Nobody cares about. Well, I mean, not to say nobody cares about that stuff, but people expect this stuff from me, so I don't tend to go for the cheap stuff so much. There we go. Have you heard of Rhapsody Audio? Yes, I have. Their stuff is kind of expensive as well, and yeah, I mean, there's one other the manufacturers I haven't really checked out. I mean, they're supposed to make good stuff as well. Have you heard the Cascade? No. Again, let me just plug it up here in line. My website, top left, next to the search, About. In there, you'll see the About Currawong in there, and in there, it has a list of the stuff I've tried, and this is not a show, this is stuff I've actually had here for any period of time. And then that stuff, if it's not listed in there, I won't have heard it, and the stuff it shows I don't count, because, you know, show impressions. So that's stuff that I recommend you check out before asking, because like if I haven't heard it, I have no idea. And yeah, there's still tons of stuff out there. I'd like to try, go to the shows. I think this would be really good. This would be really good if I was doing this full time, which is just probably not going to happen, or if it did happen, not for a while. Then I could just check out ridiculous amounts of stuff, but it's kind of impossible at the moment. Okay, so thank you everyone, and thank you especially everyone who sent me a couple of bucks my way. I was just completely surprised. So thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really blown away by that response by people. So, yeah, that's super helpful, and that will well, it encourages me to do more of these reviews and more of these. I'll do more live stuff in the future if people enjoy the Q&As. This will be. I'll kind of close up in a bit. What's your opinion about the Mojo versus IFI? Now, I've got to get in the IFI stuff. I've just started. I've talked to Vincent so many times, and we said, yeah, I've got to review this stuff, and I haven't got around to it. So this is why, again, the whole setup with this, and this is why the whole Patreon stuff is to get more of this stuff happening and to make it more viable. Because it's like, you know, your family says, why are you doing this stuff if it's just spending, you know, $50 a month on extra on electricity? And so I've already in touch with IFI. Just today they sent me an email about stuff, and I want to ask them about reviewing their amps and about reviewing, you know, I bought my iUSB 3 independently. I haven't reviewed it. I should. And I want to try stuff like the Black Label is on my list of stuff to try, because I want to do a $350 review. Audio GD R2R 11 versus IFI versus Shure Audio, and that was one of the plans I had. So what can you? How good can you get for $350? And how does it compare to something like the Mojo? So, okay. And I have some Chinese in here. I'm gonna have to translate this. I hope you're not swearing to me in Chinese. I had some people, not here, but on forums sometimes swear at me in China, swear at people in China in other languages. Here we go. I'm going to open up, we'll have a bit of fun here. Open up Google Translate, and you said, no, we need to detect language. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Tried some Fidia stuff. Do they have a house sound? Yeah, sort of, kind of, bit upper mid forward. It's that kind of house sound. Not all their stuff had it. The Fidia was kind of upper mid forward. The Parterre I liked the most. It was a bit close to like Translucent 1+2. It was a bit more even. Some of the other models had a lot of bass, so they don't really have a house sound. Yeah, the latest one, the one with the metal titanium one, I've just gone blank on it. That was kind of very focused on the mid-range, much like Jerry Harvey's Lolas, which are another thing on my list. And they really nailed it in many ways, I think, for instruments, which is why Jerry Harvey just made the Lolas as well, to focus on the instruments and the mid-range. But the Fidias, I think, I only heard them at the show, but I remember them going oh, well, this is more like what I was interested in, but I'm not going to spend whatever it is, how many thousands on a pair of custom Fidias at the moment. I just can't justify that at the moment. Oh, it means support. Oh, thank you. Titan, thank you. That was a titanium, I should have guessed. I'm going to try them again at the show. I could ask if people... I mean, Fidia's not going to offer a review pair. Tempting as it would be to ask. They're just not interested in selling to foreigners. They just don't have the... They just don't have the size to do it. I mean, the reason all these metals, he deals with metals, is because he does, like, you know, dental fillings and other stuff. It's like a company that was never intended to become what it did. Okay, so I'm going to head off. And thank you very much for everyone who dropped in some... Who sent me a few bucks. I didn't realize you could do this through this thing. That's really super awesome, and I'm kind of really surprised about that. And whether you're online or not, again, for people who missed the very beginning, Ian was the lucky person to win the Ray. And so if you want to join in all the fun, I'm on Patreon as well, and the website. And I'll see you all guys for my next review, whatever that turns out to be. Hopefully one of these things once I get around everything set up. With I'm going to move the camera around so you can focus on it. But thank you again, everyone, and I'll see you guys online elsewhere.